If you reload your own ammunition, you know that every single piece of brass has a story to tell. But actually learning to read that story, well, that can be the difference between a fantastic day at the range and a really, really dangerous one. So today, we're going to dive into this essential skill, inspecting your cases so you can reload with total safety and confidence. And this right here, this is a huge reality check. YouTuber Eric P. was getting ready for a competition, and all of a sudden, cases started rupturing on him. That fear he talks about, that's something every single reloader wants to avoid. It just goes to show how critical it is to catch those warning signs before it's too late.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with why KS rupture is so dangerous. Then we'll get into the two big problems, overworking and underworking your brass. After that, we'll learn exactly how to spot the signs of failure, figure out which dents and dings you can ignore, and finally, get you on the path to reloading with total confidence.
All right, before we can spot the problem, we've got to understand what's actually causing it. And it all comes down to how much we work the brass. So let's get into the why behind case failure. It's really all about finding this perfect balance, walking this fine line between two extremes. On one hand, you can overwork the brass. That means you're squeezing it way too much when you resize it, and that thins it out and stresses the metal. On the other hand, you can underwork it, not sizing it enough, which, causes all sorts of feeding and chambering issues. Both are problems for sure, but overworking, that's the one that leads to a catastrophic failure. So here's what you've got to wrap your head around. Every single time you fire a round, that brass casing expands violently to perfectly seal your rifle's chamber. Then, when you take it to your reloading press, you squeeze it all the way back down. This constant cycle of expansion and contraction, that's the stress that eventually just wears the brass out. All right, so we get the why. Now let's get into the how. These are the practical, hands-on things you can actually do to spot a piece of brass that's on the verge of failing. This is the big one. This is the #1 sign you need to be looking for. As Eric P. found out the hard way, the main visual clue that you're about to have a case head separation, which is when the case literally tears in half near the base, is this bright, shiny ring. That little line is where the brass has stretched and thinned to its absolute breaking point. And Eric P. gives this absolutely fantastic analogy for it. He says it's almost never a perfect, clean circle all the way around. Instead, it looks more like the stitching on a baseball. What a great way to picture it, right? That little detail makes it so much easier to spot. Now, beyond just looking, you can also feel for trouble. The classic paperclip test is a great way to do this. You just bend a paperclip, reach it down inside the case, and feel for a little groove or a ridge on the inside wall, right where that bright line shows up on the outside. And another great tip from Eric P. is to just look at the neck thickness. As brass gets older and more worked, that neck wall can get noticeably thinner. Okay. So let's tackle a question that trips up a lot of reloaders, especially when they're new to the game. What do I do about this dent? Let's sort out the harmless dings from the actual red flags. So you're out at the range, you're picking up your brass, and some of it looks a little beat up. A few pieces are dinged, maybe one got run over. The big question is this junk, or is it still safe to use? Well, the good news, according to Redneck Reloader, is that most of what looks like scary damage is actually no big deal at all. I mean, he takes some really mangled-looking cases, runs them through a resizing die, and boom, they come out looking great, and they drop right into a case gauge perfectly. And this is where we need to draw a really clear line. Dents, little dings, even flat spots from being stepped on, those are almost always totally fine. Your resizing die is basically going to iron those right out. What you have to watch out for are sharp creases. A crease is an actual fold in the metal, and that's a structural weakness that your die probably can't fix. Okay, so we know how to spot bad brass, but now for the most important part. How do we fix the root cause in our own process so we stop creating bad brass in the first place? This is how you really start reloading with confidence. It all comes down to this one critical measurement. It's called shoulder setback, or sometimes people call it shoulder bump. All it is the distance you push the case's shoulder back when you resize it. And getting this tiny measurement right is the single most important thing you can do for the life and safety of your brass, period. So how do you actually measure it? It's way easier than it sounds. It's a simple 4-step process. First, measure a case that you just fired from your rifle. You'll need a tool called a headspace comparator. That measurement is your chamber size. Second,
take that same case and run it through your resizing die. Third, measure it again with the comparator. And fourth, that tiny, tiny difference between the first measurement and the second one. That is your shoulder setback. And here they are. These are the magic numbers you're shooting for. And as you can see, the target is incredibly small. For a precision bolt-action rifle, you're only aiming for 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch of setback. For a semi-auto, which needs a little more wiggle room to feed reliably, you're looking at 3 to 4 thousandths. You start getting over 6 thousandths, and you are officially overworking your brass. Think of this table as your quick reference cheat sheet. It connects all the dots we've been talking about. If you're seeing those shiny rings and cracks, it means you're overworking the brass. The fix? Reduce your shoulder bump by adjusting your sizing die. If you're having trouble closing the bolt, that means you're underworking it, and you need to increase that bump just a tiny bit. It's a direct guide to diagnosing and fixing the problem. So the next time you sit down at your reloading bench, just remember, every single one of those cases is trying to tell you something. It's telling you about your rifle, about your dies, about your entire process. The real key to becoming a safer, more precise, and more confident reloader is to just slow down and learn how to listen.